Welcome to Indie Depth, the show where we go in depth with independent filmmakers on the filmmaking process. I'm your host, Andrew Froning, and today I have writer-director Chad Scheifele. Welcome to the show, Chad.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, of course, man. Yeah, we met at Atlantic City Cinefest, and we both had rather long short films there. You know, they weren't like a 5 minute thing. I think mine was like 20 minutes. Yours was something similar. But
Yeah,
I loved yours. That was like my favorite thing that I had seen that day.
thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting when you say longer short films because short films are. I'm sure you know this, but it's hard. It's like a hard. It's difficult because you want just enough information to keep the audience wanting to see more, but you don't want but you don't want too little for the audience to feel like it wasn't completed or you fell short on it. So it is difficult to make short films,
Yeah.
finding that middle ground,
Right.
'cause
And there are constraints because like this story, is this a 5 minute story? Is this an 8 minute story? Is this a 15 minute story? Is this something that really should be a feature? Am I just doing a scene of a movie that I want as a proof of concept
right,
into a feature? And can I make it work with just the limited information in this short? It's
exactly. So my struggle with short film is, you want to give enough of the story and of the characters so the audience or who's watching it begins to care about what they're seeing, and then if you want to cut it off after that and then leave them like kind of like hanging wanting to see more, that's great, because I feel like short films, though there's plenty of them that are really good that are under, that some of them are 3 minutes, some of them are 5 minutes. They're mostly focused just like on a moment, or like you said, like it's just a scene. But to me, like, even though they can be great and have a great message or a theme to them, I feel like it's still not enough time for you to really get into the characters that you're watching for you to actually care when it's over. Because which I'm sure you can relate to this. There's no better feeling than, with short film, you give the audience just enough for them to feel something or care, and then when it's over, they come up to you and they ask you like, I really enjoyed this scene. I really like these characters. I want to see more. It really resonated with me, and I think that's why you and I kind of like to do a little bit longer short films,
yeah.
because we want to bring the audience in a little bit more and give them more to feel. So yeah.
Sure. And I've kind of held it in my head that you can do an emotion, but you can't do a character with short film.
Right.
Not to the extent with a 5 season series or a feature
Yeah.
film. And it's funny because after this, I had gone to do a web series with 5 minute episodes. Um,
Right.
but your previous project to this was a feature film.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
go ahead.
yeah. So I did a feature film in 2014 called Natural Selection. It starred Catherine McNamara, Anthony Michael Hall, Mason Dye, and we did Brian Munzer, who was kind of in my opinion, he was the antagonist of the film, and he kind of went like he knocked it out of the park. I mean, everyone did a wonderful job, but that was 2014, so it was a big endeavor to undertake. It was fun. I made a lot of great friendships from it. Still really close to the cast and whatnot. It's on Netflix currently. It's also available on Amazon Prime, and you can get it on iTunes. And also, if we have any readers out there, if they're interested, the screenplay was actually adapted into a book.
Oh, holy cow!
Though it's slightly different than the movie. You can get on Amazon right now if you want. It's just the same name, Natural Selection. The author is Stuart Connolly, who also was a producer on the film. So
Okay.
if people are interested in looking at the novel version of the film, check it out. Natural Selection on Amazon.com.
That's interesting. Yeah, I watched the film last night. Beautifully shot, very competent grasp of where to place the camera, what to cut to. It really came across as a very professional production.
Yeah, we had a great team. My college friend Brandon Ripley, he was a cinematographer. He also was the cinematographer on Simple Things. my short film. So, I'm sure the director-cinematographer relationship is extremely important, and you got to have somebody next to you that understands what you're looking for and gets it. You can't really be having somebody on set that they don't get the vision, or they're not on the same page visually, and it holds up the stuff. So it really helps when you have somebody that you're really in sync with on set. So you just, go pump out the shots and just keep the thing moving. So,
and I think a big part of that too is not going in with, I know exactly how this is going to be, but like, the intent, like to what degree do you conceptualize what you want to shoot for a project?
Right. So obviously I don't know if it's the greatest idea to jump like straight into a feature film when you don't really have too much experience actually being able to tell stories or being able to develop characters, and especially if you're like the writer director, that's even more of a responsibility on you to to get the whole thing molded properly. So it was interesting going into this feature film because I did a short film in college with this based off it was a short version of Natural Selection, the feature film, and I didn't really do too much in between. So it was just the thing about filmmaking, which it's a process. You can't sit back and I mean, you can study on how to do it, but the only way you can actually get better in this craft is you have to actively participate in it. I mean, you have to be on set. You have to be able to experience, what can go wrong, what can go right, so you can go into the next one more prepared. And then also it's a learning process too, especially when it comes to the writing, because when you're on set and you realize there's not a lot of time, and you realize things, especially in the edit later on, that you don't need. I spent a whole half a day shooting that scene, and I didn't even use it in the cut because it wasn't necessary. So it's also extremely important to practice your craft and to just keep keeping yourself sharp as a filmmaker, because you need to be able to see that bigger picture before you spend the money and you spend the time to shoot that scene. Have the foresight to see that and know that you don't need it, and then you can start in the script writing process. So you can save yourself the time and effort by already cutting that scene out because you won't need it. Right. And I'm sure it's difficult for you since you're a cinematographer and you're all about the visuals and the nice pretty camera angles. It is hard when you are when you have those roles on a film, and especially if you're editing it, because in the editing room you tend to be biased to the scenes. So instead of sitting there like a person that you just brought in to edit the film and says, this scene isn't working for the project, the film, the story, we're going to cut it out, as opposed to you and I would be like, well, it took us all day to shoot that scene, or it looks really nice.
Right, like, trying to be protective.
Has a nice dolly shot in it. So we're kind of biased to those kinds of things. Well, yeah.
When I jumped into to do my web series, it was really just a project. Like, I didn't know what I was going to do next. I knew I didn't want to do another 20+ minute short film. It took a lot of time, and I felt like after the reception of it, it's like I tried to do character. I don't really know if I was able to pull it off in that amount of time. So I'd either need to go longer or I need to go shorter. So I did a quick writing exercise, and I wrote something that ended up being like 5 minutes. But it was interesting, and it ended on a cliffhanger, and then later on I figured out, well, maybe it'd be a good web series. Just 5-minute video, posts on YouTube. There's another one next week, there's another one next week, another one next week that I continued. But I really got it tight in the actual writing, editing phase, because I had done it so often, and I'm like, okay, this is superfluous, this I need here, this I need here. I don't think I cut anything out because of the experience of the previous films.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you, and I can speak to when I did my short film Simple Things. They say in screenwriting, a page of script usually translates to a minute on screen. So the screenplay for Simple Things was like 16.5 pages. So final project, video-wise, ended up being almost exactly around that. So it is interesting, when you practice it, or you've done it multiple times, that uh, you can just write exactly what you need, shoot exactly what you need, and then it'll save you the time and sometimes the money, or most of the time the money later on, because then you didn't waste time shooting that.
Right.
And um, it is hard to start to develop or start characters in such a short amount of time, like you said, with 5 minutes. So you kind of have to. I do think that you can start to dig into characters within 10, 15 minutes, and then just like a cliffhanger, and then you can just end it there. But it is difficult to do that, and then you have these film festivals that everyone says, oh, the magic number is under 15 minutes for short films and stuff like that. But then at the end of the day, it's like you want to make the films that you want to make, and if they're going to be a certain length, then the film, I'm a firm believer that the film's going to be the length that it's going to be. There's always room to cut the fat, but I feel like the film, after you edit it, after you polish it down, after you have people watch it, get constructive feedback on it, the film's going to be the length it's meant to be. So even though it's good to go in thinking that, okay, maybe we want this to be around 10 to 12 minutes, that's always good to go in with that mindset. But if it's not that, like, don't cut scenes just to get the time down if it's going to hurt the film,
I feel like that'd be the worst crime, to either like extend something so it reaches a certain length, or to cut too much, and then it doesn't make sense anymore.
Exactly, because because when I was editing simple things, I had the 15-minute or less thing in my head, and it includes, they say it has to include it. The runtime includes the credits too, which is annoying. So that's a minute or two of extra time that you could have used. But I found myself at some points stopping myself, saying, hey, this film is the correct length. I can't cut it anymore, because then I'd just be cutting it to get the time down.
Right.
And then it would start to detract from the film. So yeah, the film's going to be the length it's meant to be. So.
And then do you go on to hold screenings for maybe people that weren't involved in the process to get feedback to further tighten it?
And I think one of the most important phases of the filmmaking process is constructive feedback. So not only, but start doing it early. Start in the screenwriting phase. So the biggest mistake I think us filmmakers can make is we're so biased and blind to our own work, because since we're the ones that are writing it, since we know the character, since we know the story, we just automatically assume that whoever's watching it or reading it is going to get it.
Right.
But that's not the case. You got to be able to. I think I had a teacher in middle school or high school or whatever. It was pretty. It was like if you threw this out the window, your screenplay out on the highway, and some Joe Schmo picked it up and started to read it, would they be able to understand it the way that you've written it? So I think it's extremely important to write after you're done writing a draft. When you feel like it's ready to go out, send it out to people. Send it to your friends. Have people that have no idea about the film industry or whatever read it. People that aren't very, people that aren't close friends. You want to get some raw feedback too, because sometimes family, friends, they'll sugarcoat it and say, oh, I like it, this and that. The worst thing anyone can say to me, I mean, it's great when someone says, oh, I loved your film, or it's a great project, but in the editing, or not the editing, but in the beginning phases where you need feedback, I don't want to hear I liked it or it was great. Like, I don't want to hear that. Like, I want to hear what can be improved, what's working, what do you think is not working. So that's one thing that I always include, is when I write a draft and I think it's somewhat in a good rough draft, have as many people as possible read it.
And go ahead.
And then carry that on to the rough cuts. Shoot the film, get a rough cut out, have the same people watch it, or just have like a blind screening, just invite people over, whatever, have them fill out a questionnaire. What was your favorite part? What did you not like the most? Is there something that was confusing to you? And use that same constructive criticism process to polish the film into its final fit product, to the final stage of it.
And I think those questions are important too, because a lot of times when you're asking friends and family who don't know anything about the filmmaking process, for them to just say, oh, you're so talented, like, what does that give? That's not the feedback I'm looking for. I'm not looking for a pat on the back. I'm looking for, like, what resonated with you? What did you like?
Exactly.
What did you not like? What was absolutely wrong?
Exactly. And those are the important questions that have to be asked because I've crossed paths with multiple filmmakers in my day. I'm not, but like, but I've crossed paths with multiple filmmakers where they'll just write a draft or two drafts, and then they have people that are surrounded them that just read it and they don't challenge them, and they're just like, oh, I liked it, and then they go and they shoot the film, and then it has issues, but now they can't really be resolved because there's things in it that could have been fixed in the writing that weren't fixed, that
Right.
can't be fixed now later on. So if there's one thing that I learned the most from film school, which no one needs to go to film school to make movies, but was constructive feedback. And it is hard being an artist in general because we are vulnerable. When we make films, we're expressing ourselves, like we're expressing our craft. So of course it's going to be like our little baby. So when you criticize it, we're going to get defensive. But I think it's all part of the process, and as long as it's constructive criticism, it's healthy and it's necessary because and the more you make stuff, the more you put yourself out there, the more I used to be like in high school and college, I'd make something and someone would criticize it. They'd be like, "Oh, I don't understand that," and then you just immediately get defensive and go, "Well, you just don't understand. Like you don't get it."
You don't understand my vision.
Yeah, exactly. And you can't do that. So the more experience you have having people criticize your work constructively, you become open and you want that feedback. Like you want to see what's wrong with it. Because another part of the process is not just people giving you constructive feedback of like, oh, well, you need to fix this and this didn't work for me. But it's also, you could hear ideas from people that would say, I liked how you did this scene, but what if this happened? Or what if you did it in this direction or went this direction with it? And there's been plenty of people in my life who's read my scripts or watched my projects who's mentioned stuff that I never even would have thought of that
Sure.
actually ended up in the movie,
Yeah.
It was like, wow, that's a wonderful idea. I didn't even think about that, So it's critical that you have people look and critique your work.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll tell you what. You are on Netflix. You're on Amazon. You're on just a whole nother level than just showing it at a film festival and getting feedback from friends. I mean, you have to deal with feedback from strangers who are judging your work up against the Marvel films or just anything else that they could have watched that day.
Absolutely. I would say that if you do get to the point where you have a film of yours or whatever it is on some kind of major platform that the world has access to, because even YouTube, the same thing goes there. If your projects and stuff are on YouTube, everybody that crosses paths with it, there's a lot of people out there that just want to like rip people's work apart. There's a lot of people out there that are constructive, and even though it might not be the greatest feedback, it's constructive. And then there's people out there that'll just love whatever you put out there, because you're you or whatever. So you are gonna get a lot of flack, especially. But you can't. After a while, like you get in the beginning, you get upset. You get upset by it, Because if someone watches your film, it could be a short film, feature film, or whatever, and they say like it's the worst thing they ever saw in their life, or they hated it, or they don't understand why you would even do that, blah blah blah. It's like it sucks, but at the end of the day, it's like everyone's different. I mean, just think of the film that you think is the greatest film in the world. There are people out there that think it's the worst movie ever made.
Sure.
Sure. Like this is kind of maybe a silly example, but Titanic is a great film from a production standpoint, from a screenwriting standpoint. James Cameron is a fantastic filmmaker, but you'll find people out there that think that his work is absolutely trash, and that's just how it is. But that applies to like all areas of life. People think that this is the greatest book they ever read, or that's the greatest artist ever, whatever. But there's always going to be haters. So my advice, if I was to give anybody advice about if they do get a film of theirs out where the world has access to like criticize it, is, if someone writes you an email, I've gotten so much email from people writing me about Natural Selection, good, bad. Some people like would say that, why would you even make this movie? I hate you, stuff like that. And some people say it was life changing for me and it really resonated and I could connect with it in all areas. And
Wow.
That's cool. But the fact that somebody went out of their way to get on their computer and write me an email, whether it was, even if it was bad, I mean, you did something there, you know? Because I'm sure you watched a movie that's not even worth your time to even have a thought about it after it's over. Let alone get on the computer, find the filmmaker, and email them, you know?
Right.
So even though it's negative or it could be bad, you kind of did something right because you connected in some way, even though it was.
They're thinking about it. You've won.
They're thinking about it, exactly. So I don't even get upset by it anymore. You know, it's just all part of the process of being an artist. So